processing, and the other two tutors were on modeling and SQL. So we're going to do query processing first. All right, so if we all want to scroll basically to, I think it is 9. Yeah, question 9. So section 3, query processing optimization, question 9 on the mini quiz. And Raph, when you have time to get slides.
Yep.
All right, so basically, I was going to do one slide of like tips. I was going to go, hey, remember your units. Hey, remember that pipelining exists. Hey, there's two others. I can't remember now. But they're on the
Slides
slide.
already?
Excellent. So the slides for broadcasting.
Yes, broadcasting on YouTube Live.
Okay, so is that algorithms data structures?
My fault.
And then basically we're just going to get you to do the questions. So if you want to try these questions now, go for it. Please chat amongst yourselves, all right? Do not try and do this individually. This is a revision session. Chat amongst yourselves, chat amongst your peers, maybe say hi to your neighbor, right? Maybe take a moment, say hi to the people at your table, learn some names, or don't, but chat, please. Are you guys happy to include? Alright, great.
Awesome.
Now we're just gonna quickly be. Oh wait. What? Oh, okay, cool. Oh, it's not broadcast. Weird. It's alright. This is a laptop, right? So.
Yes, laptop, sorry.
Cool.
Thank you.
Sadie, how are you doing? Oh, dude, you're so in time. We can start at the beginning then. Alright. Okay, so welcome to our workshop. I'm Lucy. This is Sandy. Sorry to do this while she's just getting settled. This is brought to you by CISA, and Raph is the kingpin behind CISA involvement. This is Hassif. He's just a legend. He's just here today. So just so we all know, as much as Sandy, I, and Colton are all tutors for this subject, this is not an official workshop. We could blatantly lie to you, and you guys just have to cop it. We're not going to. We're going to do our very best to give you the tools to do well in your exam, but this is not officially endorsed by the university. We want to make that very clear. All right. If you are not a member of CISA, become a member of CISA. I am a big fangirl, so I'm biased, but they do some great stuff, and my first interactions with CISA were through revision sessions. I think they're really handy, and I love them. All right. Revision workshops. So CISA, I don't know, I'll just read Raf's slide. Every semester, CISA organizes a bunch of workshops for foundations of computing, fractions and algorithms, software-oriented software development, database systems, and software modeling design, and others. And the education committee puts these on, etc. All right. So, as mentioned in sort of the very long preamble where we mostly saw at the beginning of this workshop, we are not doing the classic where we yap at you kind of thing. We are just going to do some practice questions and absolutely ask us questions. This is a really great opportunity to get someone to break it down for you and explain it in person. Ed can be great, but sometimes it's like a back and forth to actually get the right information. So now's a good conversation to have. So again, we would like you to group up in your little tables. We've got a group of 4 here, we've got a group of 5 here, perfect. Have a yak, chat through the questions, because if one of you doesn't remember a particular subject topic, someone else at the table might. All right, so you all have now opened the mini practice exam. And now, even though I said scroll to question 9, Sandy, the Magnificent, is here. So if you could all scroll back up to question 1, we're going to kick it off at the beginning.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lucy.
No stress.
Right, hello everyone. So,
Do you want me to spacebar it?
yeah, I can do it.
Okay, she's done.
Right, so we'll start with ER modeling. I know it's been a while since everyone has done ER modeling. Recall assignment 1, good times. Yeah, so with the exam, it's gonna be a little bit different to how assignment 1 runs for ER modeling. So, e.g., you're not gonna get like a 3-page description and ask you to literally draw some kind of diagram on the spot. It'll be more so like examining your understanding of how modeling works given a very small business case, are you able to identify which one is more suitable, which one is right, which one is wrong? And things like key and participation constraints, weak entities, and data types. So in the mini practice exam, the first 5 questions are all around modeling. So as we said, we'll spend about 5 minutes on like each section. So before we get started, please spend around 3 minutes to look at question 1, and within your groups, discuss and come up with an answer, and then we'll go through the question very soon. Great.
Okay, so the expiry date of the product. Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking like food, usually they don't really specify, so it's probably just days. Yeah, because that one would be specific. I think, is it chart 12? Because it's got the 9 plus the 3.
Like even next week?
Yeah, so it was just last year.
Yeah, so it's not expired. It's a those will have 6 to
Yeah, oh, chart 12. Well, I guess because it would have I feel like it might have longer than 6 because it's like 6.
I mean, my mind has a lot of shit. I also thought it was 6. I went for a run. And then I was like, had a shower. And I told myself I was going to write again. So I think Ryan has been out the last 2 weeks.
I was thinking like a jelly. No, I was thinking I think that was our own for the site.
Yes. Yeah, you were like, oh, I love that. This was a fun day. This was in the rain.
Right. Hopefully we've all had a look at question 1. We'll go through everything. Okay, starting from the very top. The expiry date of a product. So let's think about what values you would have for that. You would generally have like day, month, year. So that would be the date data type. The second one is very similar, but be very careful in the description whether you have a specification of you need the time or not. So in this case, because we need the actual time, you should use date time instead. With question C, did Kathy test positive for COVID? It's a yes or no question, right? So you should have Boolean values. Phone number in Australia. I think a lot of this was like a bigger issue in assignment 1 as well with phone number. Very commonly, we don't actually use like numeric data types. Reason? First of all, here we have the area code, and you have a symbol here which cannot be denoted by numeric values. Also, think about it, you always will have 12 characters for phone numbers. So with the car data type, you can always reserve this amount of values instead of leaving it to some kind of numeric based, where you can have anywhere from like 0 to, I guess, 1 million. This would make a lot more sense. Next up, we have global enterprises annual revenue. So there's two conditions we have here. Global enterprise, they should earn a lot of money. So this should be a very big, it should be a big enough data type for you to store this value. And second of all, you need to be able to store decimals because, money, like decimals, makes this sense. So you should use double here. Next up, auto incremented primary key. We've all used, hello, we've all used MySQL Workbench, and you've all tried to play around with at least some of the data types and choosing primary key. And you should realize that the automatic default is integer. Next up, age. Realistically, you don't have negative ages. You don't really have people living to like 200 years old. So we should use tinyInt. The credit card one is similar to phone number. You always have a set number of that, like digits. And whenever you have a set digit, it's a really good idea to use character instead, so you can reserve exactly 16 digits of space. As for academic in university, because you have 4 predefined values, you should use, enums because you can choose from the predefined values. And then with any kind of binary data that is relatively big, like images and videos, things like that, you should use blob. Okay, any questions? If not, great. Let's move on to question 2 and 3. So we should spend collectively around 3-4 minutes on 2 and 3. Great. Let's go.
And the line means that it is only one. An exam has to have at least one. I think so, right? To me, that looks like option A. So I don't think
So are we saying like one student and also
But if it is only one exam, then it should be one exam. So if it was that case, it would be like.
it's the one that's split into 3 then after that. I mean, obviously multiple students can't take the one exam. Every student can only take one exam. So like in my own doesn't have like some exams. Same exam for all the students. I think it's really broken.
Would be like exam results. Yes. Then it would be like one result for
Right. Hopefully we've had some idea of questions 2 and 3. Let's go on. So this is question 2. Let's have a read through. First option we have. This reads from the left hand side, you have students. A student can have many exams. Well, makes sense. An exam must have many students attending it. Kind of makes sense too. So more formally, you have these constraints. So this makes sense, but let's keep reading. So the next one reads, a student must have many exams. It's not terrible, but maybe they underloaded, maybe they have project-based finals. An exam must have exactly and only one student. Okay, that doesn't really make sense, right? Like you have many students in the subject, so it doesn't make sense for one student to go to the exam only. So B doesn't make sense. Next one, you have a student can have many exams. Yeah, that's fine. An exam can have 0 or 1 student. That doesn't really make sense either. Next, you have a student can have up to one exam. Bit awkward. I think all of you might have more than one exam, so that doesn't really make sense. So that leaves us with only option A as a possible viable answer. Great. Okay, with question 3, hopefully you had.
We were just discussing about the first.
Yes.
If it was like only one specific exam,
Yes.
then it could also be the option B. No, the C option.
So option C.
Or C, but there is not the option, the growth option. But if it was like some specific exam, like only exam from database systems with storing, for example, results, then it could also have like one on the student side.
So you're talking about option C, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So for option C, the difference between A and C is that how many students can really take this exam. So if this whole exam was made for no or at most one student, sure. But realistically, would an exam be only made for 0 or 1 student? Yeah, so
Yeah, if it was like storing the exam results, so one result is only for one person.
so would this be still the same exam though? Yeah, so if you only have
Exam results, okay, so, I hear what you're saying that like if it were exam results, one person has one exam result. Agreed.
yes.
This particular model is just capturing the concept of a sitting exam. So I think for this particular model, A makes the most sense in that we're saying if you had all of the list of the university's exams and all of the list of the university's students, and you're like a student is probably going to do maybe like 4 different exams, and this exam is going to be taken by like hundreds of students. So it is kind of that many-to-many, which is what we got in this first option. That's the many-to-many. We don't actually have any other options that have the many-to-many on both sides. So A is the only possible one, and additionally, it's like optional for a student house exam and everything's
Yeah. So I think the unique pair of student and exam you're talking about would be a row in the say as the entity that is derived from this many-to-many relationship. Yeah. Great. Cool. So with question 3, I hope you guys had time to have a read, and it would look something like this. So each accommodation is identified by a unique ID. So with anything that says something has a unique ID, it's probably an entity, because why else you need one. And then you can follow by address, number of rooms, check-in time, check-out time. These are all attributes of this entity. Keep going, and then each accommodation is assigned a single type. So when you look at type, you should draw a question mark. Would this be an attribute or a new entity? Next, let's read. Each type can be assigned to multiple accommodations. And then you have a unique type identifier. Okay, so if it has a unique ID, then, well, it wouldn't be only an attribute. So it should be its own entity, and you have a description for this accommodation type. And then next, you will read for each booking, the system stores the check-in date, check-out date, and number of rooms booked, and total number of guests. And then bookings are made by people. You have all these attributes describing the person as well. So we have these 4 options, respectively A, B, C, D. So the main difference here is question 1, well, should booking be an identifying relationship? That is talking about option B versus the rest. Second question is, what is the correct constraint between accommodation and person? So first of all, do we think booking should be an identifying relationship? Okay, I think we all agree it shouldn't, because first of all, if you have an identifying relationship, you should be identifying something, right? You should be identifying a weak relationship. It should like link a weak entity weak entity to a strong parent entity, which we don't have a weak entity here, so like, what are we doing? Secondly, what is the correct constraint between accommodation and person? Thoughts? Should a person be able to make multiple bookings at different accommodations? Yes, right? Like if you're a user, you should be able to do that. And should an accommodation be able to be booked by different people over time? Yes, right? Because it shouldn't be identifying, we rule out B, and then the rest. A person can make multiple bookings. So the constraints between P and A here should be 1 to many, and then here between A and P it should be 0 to many. So all in all, you should have chosen option D. Agree?
Okay, so it's saying person has to make it at least one, but can make many bookings at accommodations that can be stored in the database.
Yes, because it says the system, okay, each booking is made by a person and the system will store. So in this case, the system will be storing when they make a booking. So in that case, you won't have users without bookings in the system. Yes. We all agree with the rest? Yes.
Yeah, I think unique identifier. The reason why we're not considering a weak entity is because booking has already like a unique type identifier. Is that why we're making that conclusion, or is it because it doesn't really specify a relationship?
So which entity were you proposing?
I was talking about the booking actually, because obviously the first thing we're doing was reasoning why it wasn't a weak entity.
Ah, yes.
So is it because in the question it says it already has a unique type identifier itself?
Yeah, so booking isn't a identifying relationship. So the question is, why isn't it an entity itself, right? So first of all, what's the relationship between booking and the other one? It basically is between accommodation and person, right? And basically, like, does it bring any additional information, or it doesn't have any unique identifying things that belong to the entity itself? In this case, not really. Things like the attributes related to it, check-in date, check-out date, number of rooms booked, and total number of guests. These things only exist when we're talking about a specific pair of accommodation and user, right? So it doesn't really exist, doesn't make sense on its own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. We good?
If a relationship is meant to be must, we need to have a relationship
Sorry, if we have a many-to-many relationship, we must have a like a relational entity.
Yeah.
Okay, so for many-to-many relationships, in the physical model, we will have one, but in the earlier conceptual and conceptual stage, we don't. Right, it will be resolved in later stages. Great. Cool. Oh, I think it works. Yes.
So the reason of the booking is not weak entities is because we can identify it by its attributes, like check-in date and check-out date.
Right. So the reason why booking isn't is if we look, yeah.
There's one of two things there.
Yes.
Booking is not considered an entity in this example, and potentially it's so right. And additionally, because it's not an entity, that identifying relationship we need to be signifying that either accommodation or either person is a weak entity. And accommodation has a unique identified booking number, and person, we can use that email, but also it doesn't quite make sense for the person to be a weak entity, because then that person be identified by the booking, which isn't, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't, maybe you can explain it better, but yeah, I think there's a couple things there.
Right. Yeah, as Lucy said. So the first thing, I think there's two questions here. One, again, why isn't booking an entity itself? The second thing is, like, what is this identifying relationship bolded diamond thing, right? So I think we can answer the entity part first. So in order for something to be an entity, first of all, it needs to have it needs to add some kind of value to be independently existing, right? So it can't be fully rely on something else. So even if it's, say, a weak entity that is not fully independent, it would have some kind of partial key that has some kind of independent value with a parent entity. But with this case, for booking, it's the check-in date, check-out date, number of rooms booked, and total number of guests that are relevant to each booking are only existing or unique, relevant to accommodation and person, the unique combination of accommodation and person, which are two other entities. So in this case, it's more like adding more information to the relationship between accommodation and person instead of being its own existing entity. So that's why it's not an entity. And the second question with this, why isn't it an identifying relationship? So with any bolded diamond, meaning identifying relationship, it can't exist alone. With its existence, you must also have a weak entity, right? Because it will tell, okay, for the weak entity, which one is its parent identifying entity, right? So in this case, first of all, the big giveaway is there is no weak entity that is identifying, so there's not much value there.
Which is represented as thick lines on that rectangle entity, just for a refresher.
Yes, so technically, that for correct notation of identifying relationships, you should have a bolded rectangle for weak entity, you should have a bolded diamond for identifying relationship, and you should have a bolded arrow pointing or connecting the rectangle and the diamond for that unique exactly one constraint. So in this case, it's like it's an invalid notation pretty much. Yes. Hopefully that answers your question. Great. So let's move on to question 4, which should look like this. Quick giveaway to the first part of it, but let's have a read, maybe 2 minutes or so to think about what are the queries or code that you would need to write to complete the rest of this model.
And please chat to your neighbors about it.
Yes, definitely. Or even earlier, think about what you need to resolve in this model.
Yes.
Then what we have to resolve is the one-to-many relationships in terms of those foreign keys.
What you basically is the same recipe. Then the example will know the answer for school. And that was and
Yeah, at least you have a legitimate reason. The reason I'm like is because
for the school it's like primary key, but for other ones you're represented by foreign keys. So with foreign key is that you have a relationship with them and together. So you want to think about A, where are we putting the foreign key to show the relationship? If you can recall the song.
yeah, so it was
So
like
if you
5 minutes past 12 last night.
when we move it to
Yesterday.
logical, then we basically started it so that we don't have these lines
And I went back in time when I got my phone.
we only represent it with the foreign keys and other keys. So it's we're doing exactly that, but in this and with data types. Kind of, yes. And well, so it's kind of local, and then moving on to physical because we have the exactly, that's the concept.
I'm regularly doing connections and going well. That's just really good. I played that once or twice. I don't want to admit that I'm new to I have to like put them all on and take them all off.
Easy to 10 second jump. Honestly, the hardest thing about easy is finding like multitasking accidentally all the time.
I think the important part would be, what are you putting as your foreign keys? So I guess time-wise, you can skip the data type or attributes for now, but really think about what are you putting as your foreign keys? And are we creating enough tables?
More tables, more.
More the merrier.
So we have languages spoken
Yeah.
as a foreign key.
I've had just a hot bit of
Yeah, I'm seriously. I'm not getting a child.
What I was thinking of we want to sort of you should also create a separate page.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, obviously have that. And I'm just going to create a sorry. There's like syntax as well. It's like foreign key language references.
It never occurred to me, I also do Duolingo, and I know doing this.
I think it's too many possible.
This is a very good person to just take my crop back.
It's prevalent is interesting because I mean most
It's
apps
also
now
when you do
well, so you see something your phone is lying about the time. All these times you go back by 2 hours. There's more than one thing. And some of them are TVs do go on times like they don't change it at all.
And then, yeah, that's when like, oh, that's my topic, so I have like developed files. So like,
Yeah.
no, I sent my mom, but she did go.
Yeah, and it makes it so I don't know how to represent as a foreign key.
So like, then when I go to her, I'll send it to her, she's like, this one for me.
Yeah.
I don't actually have an account.
Oh, like, more blocks.
References.
Okay. Hopefully we're nearly done. Question mark, maybe nearly. Okay. let's just go through this one by one. So here we already have an example for school because, well, there's not much that it's the basic simplest form you have. You have all the attributes of school, things like name, city, students, and then you need to define which one's the primary key. So very standard stuff. So the next one for teacher. What do we think? What should we have in teacher? We should have ID, first name, last name. What else?
School name is a foreign key.
Exactly, because here between teacher and school, we have like a one-to-many relationship, right? And then with one-to-many relationships, which side should the foreign key go to? Like, let's think about it. If a teacher can be employed in at most one school, and a school can have many teachers, does it make more sense to add a school name column in teacher, or add many teacher columns in school, right? It would make more sense to just add a school name in teacher. So here in teacher, we have an additional school name foreign key. That in the notation here, we have foreign key, school name, references school, so the school table, and brackets school name. Cool? Any questions here? Okay, if not, great. Notice here, we have a mystery attribute gone missing. Being languages spoken. So recall with multi-valued attributes, they don't really exist anywhere beyond the conceptual phase, which means that we need to resolve it somehow. And here, because it's not in teacher, well, we've created a new table for it. And what would be the primary keys of this new table?
Is this for language spoken?
Yes.
Oh, could be like language name
Yeah.
or like language attribute.
Yeah, you could have like language name by itself, or we should have, So because we have multi-value attributes, generally when we're resolving it, you would create some kind of a lookup table where you have a combination key with the new, well, languages spoken in this case, and the original primary key from the entity that was connected to, so in this case, teacher. So here we have the combined primary key of teacher ID and language name, and in this case, teacher ID would be a primary foreign key from the teacher table. Cool. Great. So next we have a weak entity performance review. With weak entities, what do we need to do?
Wait, sorry, so the foreign key in the teacher language is the teacher ID.
Yes, so basically we have two primary keys in this teacher languages, being the combination of teacher ID and the language name. But so language name makes sense, right? Because it's a new table, we're talking about languages. Teacher ID is, so we have the unique pairs of teacher and whatever language they can speak. So you can add as many rows to this table as you want. But teacher ID doesn't come from languages spoken, right? It comes from the teacher table, and that's why we kind of imported from a foreign table, hence it's a foreign key. But because it's also the primary key, it's a primary foreign key. Right, cool. Next, for performance review, we have a weak entity. With weak entities, what is the full primary key? Yes, of course. So, like, first of all, its partial key should be a part of the primary key, but also the primary foreign key from its parent identifying entity. In this case, it would be teacher. Oh yeah, just a note. Yeah, this is the correct full notation of if you have an identifying relationship. You should have a bolded diamond, a weak entity, bolded rectangle, and then this bolded arrow, this full pair. Okay, yep. So here this is the performance review table you should have. The important thing here is you should have the combined primary key of the date, which is the partial key, and the primary foreign key teacher ID, which is the primary key of its parent identifying entity. And then all the rest is just the attributes it originally had. Great. Any questions? If not, I think, yeah, we have a question 5. If we could quickly look at question 5 for, say, a minute. Just concerned about time. Okay, major hints. That's the definition of super key and candidate key.
Okay, so title is should be like on a little bit because it's IT. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I think we'll just go through this time issue. So, in the question 5, you'll see 2 keywords. The first one being super key, the second one being candidate key. So it's kind of like a subset relationship where you have the larger umbrella-ish called super key, where it's any set of fields where you don't have any distinct tuples with the same values in all key fields. In human terms, it just means that you can uniquely identify rows using this set of fields. However, you don't have any constraints on it being, a very confined set of fields. You can have all the set of fields. You have all fields in the world. With candidate key, it's a subset of those super keys where you can use a minimal value or minimal amount of fields within the table to uniquely identify rows in the table. So in here, the first part A of the question says, would title be a valid super key for this table? Can title uniquely identify rows in this table? No, right? Like, first of all, there's repeating values of title, like IT, right? So you can't, using the values for title, you can't actually uniquely identify rows. So title doesn't work as a super key. What about ID title from what we can see here? Yes, right? So with any unique combination of ID and title, you can identify unique rows in this table. However, do we know for sure? No, because we don't know what happens in the ... right? Anything could happen. So you don't know for sure. But it's possible that it can be a super key. It's also possible that it can be a candidate key, right? Yeah? It's possible as well, but you don't know for sure because you don't have all the information. Right. Cool. And that should sum up all the sections for ER modeling, which leads us onto SQL and relational algebra by Colton.
Alright, I don't know if we really have time to spend a lot on this because I think, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but hopefully people would have spent a fair amount of time on SQL relational, maybe not relational algebra, but SQL before assignment 2. And also it's a big topic, so it's not like we can revise everything. So really, maybe the most valuable thing we can do in this section is just talk about what's going to happen in the exam. So the exam for this subject in general is pretty consistent every semester. It doesn't really change. So what you're going to get for the SQL section is based on all prior history, like every time that's ever happened in the past, you get your assignment 2 case study, possibly a slightly stripped down version, but it'll be the same case study from assignment 2, so make sure you read through that before the exam. And then you'll get 3 to 4 questions, usually 4 questions. The most difficult one will be about a level of like question 8 from the assignment 2. And then the first 3 will be easier than that, as you'd imagine. So in terms of studying, do the assignment 2 all over again, do it from scratch. And yeah, make sure you're up to date with that situation there. Things that we don't care about, that we did in assignment 2, we don't really care about, slight syntax mistakes. So if you've got, some word wrong or you misspelled the column name, we're really not too upset about that. We're not going to try and execute your queries. We're just going to read it there in the text box in SpeedGrader. So no one really cares. Anything else? No, not really. Okay, so what I was aiming to do was this kind of structure, but given we have sort of 50 minutes left, it might be best to just kind of go through questions 1 and 2 just as you can right now, and then we'll double check together at the end of that. So maybe sort of 10-ish minutes. Has anyone looked at the SQL golf study yet? Like when you were studying for assignment 2 or not? Yeah, okay, so at least one person has. I guess everyone else didn't. So I reused the case study from the LMS, the SQL golf study, which was kind of our extended practice. So if you've done that before, you won't have to refamiliarize yourself with it. Otherwise, pretty simple model. So just try those 2 questions, and then we'll come back together in 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. No, it's actually periodically done, but it has like gaps where it'll be fine for like 2 months. And I'm like, great, I don't worry about it. And then it'll act up again for like a week, and I'll be like, in and out of the Apple store, and then they're like, but it's been fine. I had factory reset once, I actually bought a new laptop, and this is last like not, and then I returned it. So I was like, it's fine again. And for every dead moment I use this laptop, it's fine. Everything I do is on the.
That's still like, yeah, but the battery life and stuff, and this is just so good. And it's not even expensive, it's like $1,500.
Yeah, but this is a Pro. And the Pros are generally like $300.
Yeah, you just don't buy Pro. Like the MacBook Air, the M4 MacBook Air kicks grand better to heat itself than MacBook Pro. But performance-wise, this thing destroys. It's absolutely so good. I don't even have a desktop anymore. I just use the MacBook Air.
Oh, as in like you don't have a desktop computer. I thought you don't have like a desktop on your computer, and I was like, wait, what?
I use ours, by the way, there's no desktop. That's one thing that sucks, though, you can't do games.
Yeah.
No, I don't, because this is on now. Yeah. But, I mean, the whole point is you don't need that because it's small space, so for the most part, it's pretty easy work. But yeah, you can't do straight. Save yourself a shot.
Shoulder bonding. Me and my laptop is so bonded right now.
You can, like, soak the case in, like, some water and, like, the stickers will come off.
It's so funny. You can see on his last legs. It's not taking out one face.
And then you just need to go in the closet.
Did you have a drawing class? Yes, DJ, I had
Oh,
yeah, it's kind of like the GoPro, but like the new age. Yeah.
Yes. Let's say what we really want. Honestly,
Or you like a travel blogger?
my sister stole it from me as soon as I bought it, so I haven't seen it other than like the
So how was it good purchase then? Like it immediately crashed off and it got stolen from you. How was it good purchase?
It's just advantageous. So like,
So does your sister do any sort of body work?
she likes to like, take videos, but she doesn't necessarily want to like it. I don't know.
Because I respect it. I just go to my page through every damn time. I don't post it anyway. I'm just looking back at the pages doing how to come. I love it. I honestly don't want to bet.
So fancy.
But I mean, no one's not page again. So I can't want to mention it because I'm prioritizing my course.
Benefits for it.
I pretty much the mentality that every day you can keep that one, you can buy yourself a page.
Yeah, I just put, I get better value. I just put full page through it. I'm like, it's like,
I think, maybe not for this question, but next bit we can look ahead. Then you have to think about whether you use like natural or I think like probably
And we go to assignment one. Not assignment one. Question one. I assigned you question one, yes. So I'll just leave that up there. Try question two.
Yep, after that one, do we have to like include distinct or if we just said select one?
Ideally here you'd want distinct because you wouldn't want to repeat it multiple times.
Yep.
Yeah. So we didn't say return every time that she's ranked in the top 10. We were just on the name of the show. She never ranked it. Good question.
I can bring myself into the stores right It was definitely one of those that she gave us, but it was all.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right. At that point, it's just all the same. When I did, when I started my, 2009 MacBook Pro, I started it, and this was, I think this was 2018, so it was an H when I started going there. And I had the exact same case as that.
Yeah. No, I'm sad, because it's like, when it was dying, I only had 4 years ago.
Yeah, especially the.
That's why I'm slogging it through its paces. I refuse to quit on it. Resuscitate it every time it starts dying.
Yeah, the new ones came out, and like the value of them was not
Hey, my giveaway was so good to me. Other than when it's starting making.
Honestly, if it wasn't like practicality, I'd say, okay, fair enough. But it's clearly abusing you.
It's been very good. It's been very good since. So that's genuinely nice.
That's pretty solid.
Thank you. Thank you. That's over 2 months. That's over 2 months of
It's
knowing.
like a week before the exam, which is gonna explode.
I only got 1 exam. It's not this week. It's fine, man.
Oh yes, it's last exam.
No. I've got a year. But just like in the months before.
So this is your.
Master Sauce Engineering Project?
Oh,
No, that's the next step. I think at 8, and that was like in one morning average. Which was that's where I should be 17 to it, and really just got extra. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's the next subject. Next subject is like flow, and I think the next one's just the master class. And I think this semester was here, so
Oh,
it
so
was
you want
12
6 months
Yeah, so master summer engineering project is 6 months and then it's like a year. But I haven't been wrong. I have a team. I worked with them in the previous subject, and then the additional thing that we got, we had 2 people, so originally we switched to team for SRS. That's where you
This is one I only have four, right? So it was 80 for the year long that time, but the smaller like it's all common.
the first one, yeah, it was on average 70 or so.
And it's also not really like. Even with the subtitles, a lot of it is only like every person. It doesn't matter what it is. It hallucinates.
So the end product, I can mark it once.
Sometimes I think it's not used to have.
How is it like take communication from
Yeah, sometimes I'm just watching it and suddenly the subtitles
It'll be so easy to let them make true, right?
Essentially, I mean, yeah, I was very blessed in my team. We didn't have registered. And literally, we had one point where we had to go to tell you what they were. And our placement supervisor was also kind of like a power line. He literally just been like telling everyone last week, he was like, say this, just say no, just need to say no. Like, that's why I was good with that. I was like, but yeah, so myself and Sam project, computing, software programming, you just did group 1 project, basically one level, no grades, otherwise.
I really couldn't.
Oh, you need to remember a few words.
No, some of them I actually could.
I'm doing that next year, I will.
That was last year and I can't.
Yeah, my major's not getting
It
out.
was really good. I couldn't do it.
Oh.
I couldn't do it.
You can either choose to do an internship subject and then that takes away credits and you do a specialty one. Or you do a specialty.
Oh, no, I'll look at it. Next year when we do the game jam, it's like use that for my ability. Well, we need to use one system. You can't use it for it.
That's your baseline like software engineering. They do have that.
Oh, so you
Yeah.
You don't like get it together.
Yeah.
You make a dating sim, I make an RPG game, and then you merge them in Modo.
Well, yeah, because basically the credits you can spend to do the specialization, and the cost will be credits.
I enjoyed it.
Now my Instagram sees this.
But it's still just like.
You can say that.
It just needs to have one credit. It's like in the middle.
All right.
I think the same as
How do we go? Here is one solution that you can come up with. You could also do this using the rank window function. If you use that over time at 2, you'll know it's a bit of a shortcut for questions like this. But the sort of more traditional way is to not use a window function like this, maybe more compatible. So we're doing something that involves finding sort of the minimum value for the number of strokes grouped by quantity whole number. So this is finding plus. What's the table going to kind of look like? Well, the row that has like, for every hole that exists, which is the quantitative whole number, we need both of those, right? Because we had 2 parts to the primary key. We're going to have the minimum number of strokes that anyone has ever managed to finish that in. Okay? And then we're joining this up here. We've got a bunch of left joins here. And we're joining this onto this, where down here I'm checking that they're equal to each other. The number of strokes is equal to, sorry, the number of strokes inside of it was equal to the min number of strokes we got here. Now, we've got some left joins here, and also this where is null thing that I put down here, which is a bit strange. Why do we need those? Any guesses? You could have done this without having a where is null thing as well, just having another left join here, which was not a natural join. You have to have an on condition at the end. It would be a bit messy. So I just decided to remove that and go in the where it was. Any guesses? Yeah?
Because you have to include like conditions where the whole is null. So like,
Yeah.
So we basically want to include in our results, if there's a hole that has never been played for some reason, maybe there's a brand new golf course that was just built last week, no one's ever done a competition on it, we don't want to throw those away. Okay, so we need to left join kind of all the way through here, from hole all the way through, and either keep it if it was null, the result throwing that, or make sure that if it wasn't null, we're starting here, we are only matching all players and achieve that bonus as well. Alright, so those would probably be maybe questions 1 and 3, I would say, out of the 4. So in terms of difficulty, this question 2 would probably be 3 out of 4. So there might be one that's slightly harder than this in the exam. So how does everyone feel kind of comfort-wise getting this? And again, because it doesn't have to execute like assignment 2, if you write something which is almost there, you will get partial marks. So do you think that maybe you're sort of on track to be able to do this level of difficulty? And if you're you're ready for this, but maybe not anything more difficult, then what I'd recommend is in the exam you skip question 4. And even if you are an SQL god, I'd probably still skip question 4 and move on to the rest of the exam. Just because the amount of time is really it's not productive to be spending that in the question 4. You'll get better marks per minute by doing the later part of the exam, and then you come back and you do question 4 if you need to. So yeah, exam strats are important, unfortunately. All right, so to keep moving, keep in mind there's more practice. So like I just said, there's this golf study if you haven't done that before. So if you scroll down the modules, there's like 100 questions in there, something ridiculous. So you can do that. Also, we've got some topical Spotify and Uber Eats active learning stuff as well, again in modules if you just scroll down. I think at least a few people have been finding those on Ed, their questions. Okay, so really quickly as well, the last thing to talk about in this section is relational algebra. So because it's hard to draw on browsers, you guys get off easy. We're pretty much just going to ask you some very basic multiple choice questions where we say, which of these relational algebra statements match up with this problem description, or maybe vice versa. So you'll just get given them and then you'll have to kind of match them. So, you can have a look at the question in, oh, sorry, I just updated it. Hang on, I might have to refresh. Is it okay if I refresh this? Yeah, there we go. How do I present? There we go, slideshow button. We can try and do this. So, I don't actually have the problem description on the slide, because I really just did it while sitting there. Who wants to have it? No, that's not even what I need. Do we have the exam up? No, not on here. Nope. Alright. I will look at someone's screen if you don't mind. Okay, so we've got 4. Did you have a guess at them? So actually, you could just guess them and scroll down and try submitting the exam if you want to see if you got it right or not. Okay, any guesses for this one? This is topics of forums where the general user with user ID 1 has posted at least once before that particular day.
Yeah, the first one is correct.
First one is correct. Any disagreement? Maybe the first thing to quickly revise is we had just a couple different operators here. So can you read out to me what this is supposed to be sort of saying in terms of reading it from the inside out?
There's an in and join with
Yep.
post and foreign.
Yep.
Then there's a selection that filters out when post is before the 1st of January 2022
Right.
equals 1.
Yep.
And there's a projection from the foreign topic which filters out the
Okay, great. So we've got joins, the bow ties, we've got the selection and projection. Remember, selection and projection, confusing because selection, relation algebra is projection. It's not selection in SQL, right? Selection in SQL is actually projection, which is terrible. Okay, so we got this one, we agree that one is yes. What about the second one?
No.
I said no. Why is it no?
Projection and selection.
Yeah, we swapped the projection and the selection, so that's not going to work very well, is it? Right. This case here, it doesn't even make sense in terms of you can't select a logical condition like that. You don't keep it. Sorry, you can't project a logical condition. Right. Third one there. Yes or no? What's the difference? Is there a difference?
No. Just bracket placement.
Right. So the bracket placement being different is changing things a bit though. What it's saying is that we're doing the selection first before we do the join. Okay. So we perform the selection on the post table and then we join the results of that selection with here. So if you're visualizing like our sort of plans that we draw, and you have the selection on one arm, and then you take the results of that selection and do a join on that. So the question is, does that affect anything? Will it still be correct? Why?
Is it only related to the post selection, so it doesn't matter if it's true before?
Exactly, yeah. So all of these conditions here, they're all post on something, post on something. And the join is not actually affecting that. We haven't somehow manipulated that or transformed or done something like that by performing the join or not performing the join. So it's fine to do your selection first and then join the result. And in fact, the query optimizer will probably wind up doing this in practice, doing a selection first before doing a join, because it means that the result of this selection is going to be a smaller table, and so the join will be cheaper. But we're not thinking about that at this stage. So later we'll do something with that. Okay, last one here. There's some kind of interesting things. No, why not?
Projection.
Yeah, so we're removing everything except for topic when posted and posted by. We actually have, first of all, is this a problem actually that we've done this yet? Is it?
No, not really. Because
Yeah.
we're doing a projection on the same columns, we're doing a selection, and we're doing a cross product with foreign. So, but the information still be there.
But the ID in post is not actually ID in forum, so the it's the cross product.
Yeah.
But you still need to match it where post form is with the post ID whilst post form, because you need to project form.
So there's a few things here. We don't have the post forum actually doing this, right? So we lost that. And also it is a cross product, so there's no, we don't have a check anywhere else. If we had like an additional selection outside and we were checking the form ID was equal to form, then if we projected out form, I think it would work. But it's not going to work in this case, we're still missing the form ID. So yeah, it's kind of like a double flip-flop where you think, okay, maybe that works, but you're actually missing the required attribute to be able to do the check afterwards, the post-cross product, it filters that out. So yeah, that's probably the most complicated one. But this is sort of to throw people off, because if you've got an intermediate level of understanding, you'll probably see some examples, and most of them will be like, you can't just change the order of your projections, you can't push those in. So people will see this and sort of immediately think that it's wrong, but then if you have a little bit of understanding of something, you're, oh, but actually it's projecting out the things that we need later, so it's fine, it's correct. But then you come full circle and like, no, you actually can't do that with the cross product. It's not good. Yeah.
Can we project a topic even if it's not in the post table?
So example.
Like the topic, isn't it in the
Oh yeah, okay, no, that's totally wrong, then, yeah. So that's just another way that it's wrong at that point. So the topic, yeah, there's not even a column called topic in post. That's kind of the way.
Sorry, would this actually just return every forum topic in forum?
The last one.
Yeah.
Well, because topic is not actually a column in post, it's kind of undefined. What do we?
But isn't it referencing forum? Forum, not topic, not post.
No, but the way that these are bracketed though, it's actually doing the projection on post.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's projecting, and then it's taking the result of that projection and doing cross-product with forum.
So projection is the first step, and second is post-product.
Yes. So that's why we move the brackets like here, so they're around just post on the projection.
So if there is a bracket between the posts, so that will be refers to project, like the
Yes.
C and D is the same.
C and D.
Yeah, because C is also a bracket in post.
Yeah, but so it's about the, so this is saying that, right, this is corresponding to this operator.
Yeah.
It's a bit removed because we've got a very long condition on it. But yeah, this bracket is just saying that is applying to this relation here. In this case, the projection is applying to this relation here, which is post. So if we like remove that bracket and dropped it, then it could be that this was operating on the cross product after the cross product happened. In which case you could sort of cover it, but in this case no. Alright, all good? So relational algebra is not going to be a whole lot of marks in the exam, so don't be super stressed if you're not a wizard, but the SQL is something to be strategic about. Did you have a question before?
No, I was just like, I wanted to raise my thoughts. All right, so query optimization and processing. I hope everyone online can hear me. So just a quick exam tips. Please always write your units. You're going to be using IOs, you're going to be using tuples, you're going to be using pages. Please know what they are because you're going to be converting them and it's easy to lose track. Please understand the formulas sheet. Just memorizing the formulas will not help you understand how to operate with when there's pipelining involved. So please know what each of the steps are, and if you guys want to chat about it afterwards, I love to explain it. But yeah, if you don't really know what the 2 in like 2 times the number of passes times the number of pages in a sort merge is for, that could be a good indication. You got to work that out. So that 2 is for the read in and read out. And then the B in block orientated nested loop join, B is standing for that buffer size, right? Be careful for the usability of indexes. Hash indexes don't do range queries. There is a formula for it, but it's majorly inefficient. Cluster indexes, you got to look at the search keys and look at if it's compatible, and then also be wary of composite index search keys. So when you get queries with a composite index search key, then you have to know what order that is appearing in, because you can use, say, let's say it's age and salary, you can use age and salary, but you can't necessarily use it for salary because it's secondarily sorted by salary. And then reduction factor decides cost and result size, and the result size is going to depend on your selection conditions. All right, cool. So question 9 on your quiz, you guys want to give that a go, and then we'll chat through it. They have like a top with like 3 markers, all 6
this subject is focused on studying the manufacturing components. Check his leg. He's like, I'm done. It's a product. It's depressing. Yeah, it's a little bit whiteboard. Yeah, it's one of those like Google whiteboards, and there's only the one, so it's just like the number. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Or really just the
No,
hard
it's
one.
not the one that.
No, I know that was the funny one, and this is like another one on the other side.
Yeah.
And the door we can't really
I will not this
Yeah,
really.
If I see it,
Yeah.
I'm traumatized.
I'm so glad no one uses the wall by the alcohol that's turned side. Which is what I think that's really could be very disruptive to someone.
Okay, I understand it, but it's like, I think it's stupid. It's what do you mean the lines? I mean, but if you understand the way the weapon was to
I have to use that door.
and you can't have half. Yeah, you can't have half. Or you had some. Not in that.
Alrighty, so a good way to approach these questions is to write down everything you know and all the numbers that the brief gives you. Alright, so on my next slide, I've spent the time to write down at the top of my slide. I know that the product table has 1,000 pages. I know that they've said that there's 100 tuples per page. Therefore, I know there's 100,000 tuples, right? And then they also tell me about the ranges and available values for things like total price and quantity. So I write those down, those are my ranges, and these are distinct values. Now, it is not that much of a big deal if you're off by one. We use pretty round figures in most assessment pieces. Then we calculated our reduction factor for total price. Now, we got 0.5, and that's based on the range reduction factor formula. Does anyone want me to talk through that? Alright, it's here on the right hand side. If anyone is feeling spooked by it, either say so now or see me afterwards. And then we also got the quantity and the quantity for inequality queries based on the equality formula where you're looking at one over the distinct number of keys. Right? So number of values or number of keys. Then, because the result size, which is what we're looking for in question 9, is the number of tuples in that table, which is product, and then the reduction factors, the product of those reduction factors. We've got 100,000 tuples, and then we've got the product of our reduction factors, which is 0.05, and we get 500 tuples back. Any questions on that one? Great, alright, please continue with question 10. I mean, I assume they just like kept it nice. I never really done it in the code.
No, the problem is that it is plausible to show. So it's not me just again. I can talk for 2 hours. It's always really so which was it? Like there were 21 distinct values or something like that.
Oh, just like, just the range slides, right? It says equal on both sides. So it's like 0 to 10,000 is actually 10,001 is included.
Wasn't there continuous values there, right? This was 0 to 10,000. If you add it like the delta time period wasn't valid.
Yeah, maybe it is weak.
You have any of it that you values, right?
But the 10,000 is included in that, because the bracket.
Yeah, but that's just the end point, right? So like if you're saying like 0 to 1, it doesn't mean there's like all the values you have are between 0 and 1. Not
But you
it's
can
not
have the
just-
range.
Yes, I mean you have a range in between as well.
Oh my god.
So like the range of values that you have is a range of 1.
Yes, it's great. Like, so it doesn't work for the quantity here where you've got distinct values. Yeah, so if you can only have a quantity of 1 or 2 or 3. But it still works. What was the specific example?
Well, I was just saying that it feels incorrect to say that this would be 100 value stuff and this would be 10,000 value stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's
That's why I was
Is it
like,
also a starting point for like reduction factors?
or it's like
I'm just,
written as
I'm just, this was as it was written in the question, so I was just like, having this side by side.
yeah, well, actually,
Sure,
that's
very
That'd be quantity, right?
Yeah. But they generally use either brackets like
because they don't want to see everything. Yeah. And by they, I do too.
Alright, team, we're going to chat about question 10. Now, it asks for the most efficient query, right? Does anyone have a guess on what the answer is? Yeah? Yes! Okay. So, controversially, the answer is 1,000. So, because the cost of the B plus 3 index, you're tempted to use that formula, and you'd be right to check it, right? Like, we have this index available, our search key is on that value, so we can use it for this query. But we find out that by the time we compute our reduction factor and how many tuples we have, we end up with a value of 1,001 input output rates. But our index scan is only ever a maximum as big as there are pages in that database, right? In that table. So it's actually cheaper to just do an index scan by 1 hour. Are there any questions on that? Alright, if you want to continue question 11, then we'll have a quick chat about it. Yes,
He hasn't no kill threat. Doesn't he kill people? No, he's not allowed to. It's immoral. So we can't kill the Joker. Yeah, you know how many people the Joker's killed? Yeah. Which I think we should check this out.
It's more like just make a mistake or I've actually figured out. So either you got it right, which makes you
Yeah.
or you didn't. And then like you're fighting against it and say sorry bro, say sorry bro, I'm fine. Go through why you were wrong. It's been going to keep it. So it's kind of
Oh, that's a different strategy. So that's the using unlisted index. Whereas there's actually another way of
Oh, sorry, I didn't understand. That's not this time.
using n pages. So these are two different strategies. So this one costs 1,000 IROs, whereas this one costs 1,001 IROs. So the most, like the cheapest one, that one's 1 IRO cheaper. So that one just puts for any query, you can just do a heap scan. And sometimes it'll be more efficient doing an index.
Alrighty, we're just going to run very quickly through question 11. And then we might actually fast forward through some of this because the sign up through will be fairly fresh and there's still a lot of content we'd like to cover from the later weeks of the course. So you will have a copy of these slides and you also have access to the quiz. So if you want to review this in greater detail, you have the tools. Alright, so just for question 11, the only thing that's particularly, so question 11 was the block nested loop join. So when you're using a block join, right, you have to calculate how many blocks you have. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your buffer size, you're going to subtract 2 pages, one for your read in, one for your write out, and then you're going to take the number of pages in your outer table and divide that by the number of pages you can fit in your buffer, right? So by the time you work out that you have your 20 pages in pages, you work out your buffer is 12, less 2 for those read and read out, then you have 10, so then you end up with basically 2 blocks. So it's 2 times the number of pages in your outer table, and that gives you a cost of 20,020 IOs. Alright, so we're going to jump forward a few questions, and I think that we'll just move on to the next section if everyone's happy with that. Great. So then you've got multi-joint optimizations. I've given a really detailed breakdown, so you should be able to follow them. And then Sandy, are you happy to run with normalization?
Right. I think normalization is week 9 question mark material, which should still be relatively fresh. So the questions aren't really creative either. You'll probably get some kind of relational table asking you, what normal form is this thing in? And then they'll be like, okay, if it's in first normal form, make it into third normal form. Yeah, it's always like this. So basically, just to recap, remember that first normal form is that there's no repeating groups in relations you have. And then second normal form is you've resolved all your partial dependencies. And third normal form is everything's perfect. You've also resolved transitive dependencies. Great, so let's spend a few minutes to look at question A and B together. And then I'll go through. Actually, you might as well just look at the entire question.
Okay, so you have the repeating groups. I thought so like there's like multiple instances of that JQ around in a custom number, but it's not like an entire list. Oh, just like the first question. Would you get it? Yeah.
Because there's no, you don't multi-value itself.
Okay. Custom number.
My
Third one.
is the shield?
Just the partial.
Usually, that's
So basically, if you have a key with
I think if I read this
So there's like very little structure and like it's hard to deadline.
Yes.
And like, okay.
That makes sense.
Is your supervisor, do you get a choice to your supervisor and is there specific available? Are there any restrictions?
None of these are in each other. The primary reason why it's like this one's dependent on this one. So we use that first one. That's what I thought. I thought it was like A.
It's not like you're chopping potatoes.
Yes.
Obviously that depends more, I would guess on how they actually, make the conversation Excel and Excel. Because like obviously like when you had this chat, you have, all they do is like, stick all this command and then back to all this out, so that's what it is, like how to structure.
And then also maybe
How do you
they have
feel
to
interact?
and it's not exactly other companies
No, I'm saying not changing model itself, I'm saying it's mostly, like, if it is one message versus five, is let off one message, then that would mostly be to do with how, whatever the one thing, to summarize the message. Well, that's what happens is, because if you go from a session with any other message, obviously, so you have to like summarize parts, and then you summarize like if you got 1,000 messages, you might like summarize it like the first 10 groups, and then those become the new context, and then that gets a pair of two. So it's more about the algorithm of doing that. I guess yeah.
It's like something like you have to
So that's what you're looking for. That's
like at least interesting, kind of. I don't know.
Because you could also do, aside from like doing the research, it could also just be
a normal thing for change. Like if I change the bright one,
that would be a really good
I would need to update mobile.
like at the end of your thing, like at the end of 2025, like different providers, the transition rate definitely going to be so
Okay, let's go.
but you just see what they do, like just look at the dev tools, just see what it's
Yes.
Right, hello. Hopefully we've had a look. So, for this table you received, how can we see any repeating groups at all? No, right? So repeating groups would be like if you had like doubling fields, attributes, things like that. Well, here we don't, so it is already in first normal form. Great. Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. What kind of anomalies can we use? Yes.
The update anomaly.
Yes. So update anomaly would be like the issues that you'll come up with when you're trying to add a new row into this table. And what would an example be? Like, what are the issues with update anomalies? Sorry, not adding a new row. It should be like you're updating a value, right? Yeah.
I guess if you like, I don't know, update a writer information, you have to also update the rating as well.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, with the update, if you like change anything in one of the columns, then look, if like as you said, if you want to change, say, what was your example?
I guess like let's say JK Rowling. Right?
Yes.
You want to update, we'll say the mobile number.
Yeah.
You have to go through every single entry of JK Rowling and then update the mobile number.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So because we have a lot of different repeating, like for example, every single instance of J.K. Rowling here, you would have like things for different movie scripts, movie treatment, award speech. So they're different roles in nature. However, the writer of this is essentially the same thing. So if you just want to change the idea, concept of writer, you have to change it in a lot of different places. And that's the same with, for example, I don't know, if Sony decides to change the agency, I don't know. So you have to go through different parts of the entire database you have to change everything there. Similarly, you also have insertion anomalies and deletion anomalies. Does anyone remember what they are? Yes.
If you want to delete the last row,
Yes.
you also lose the description as well.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So here HBO is the only row with HBO in here. So if we delete this, we also don't have any information about like what agency, writer, what like rate, a lot of these things, right? We just lose everything, which we shouldn't be losing because they're not exactly the same thing. So we're losing additional information that we should retain in our database. As with insertion, similarly, it's like how when we're deleting things, we only want to delete one thing, but you have all the rows data removed. Similarly, with adding something, if we only want to add, say, HBO, imagine HBO doesn't exist, we also need to know who's the writer, right? Like, we also need to know all the chain of information in here. So it doesn't really make sense to have everything bunched up here, especially if you don't have complete information at always, right? So yeah, great. That is with anomalies. And we know that this is already in first normal form. And to make it into second normal form, we need to resolve partial dependencies, right? So here are the transitive dependencies we have for this this case study we have. So we have customer number, writer, and order, and this is our key that we are concerned with. We have a combination of customer number and order. From here, can we see any partial dependencies? So recall what partial dependencies are. Yeah, so if partial dependencies are if you have a part of a key being like the left-hand side of the arrow, right? So here we have customer number and order, which are all part of the key, not the entire key, as the left-hand side. So here, so we know that the first one and the third one violates this. Then what do we actually do with these violations? Yes.
We split off into different tables and make sure we have a reference.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, you just create new tables for them, and then just leave the original as a you just add a key for referencing this relationship. So here you have customer and order. So for customer, now you move all the customer related stuff, so name and agency, into this new. You move customer number and name agency into customer. You have product ID and product description into order, just like what you have in the transitive dependencies. And then you leave the rest in the original, big relation. Right. Cool. Now, that's good. We want to solve any transitive dependencies. So now that we have it in second normal form, we want to make it in third normal form. So recall what transitive dependencies are. Any thoughts? So you have like a non-key as the determinant, right? So here, what is the violation here? Yeah, we have the writer here. That's a non-key, right? It's not a part of the key. It's not the whole key. So it's a non-key. So, yeah, we need to solve this and make writer and all its related dependencies a new table as well. So here, we split that out. Writer, you have rating and mobile. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have rating and mobile. You split it into a new table. And then you leave the reference of writer as the foreign key here in the original consultation table. So you can see previously, because in the second normal form part, we created new tables for the partial dependencies where you have the part, you have primary foreign keys because customer number and order form parts of the candidate, or in this case, our primary key. So that's why they have a primary in front of it instead of just foreign key. So at the end, you should have consultation, writer, order, and customer. So you have 4 tables in total. Any questions? We good? Great. So do we have hopefully kind of yes?
Let's go. All right, so my slides are very brief on data warehousing. Who would like to recap data warehousing before they try the question or afterwards to clarify questions? We can do a gladiator style. We can be like, recap now. Let me attempt the question. Attempt. All right, attempt. If there's only one opinion, that's the opinion that's get heard.
So like this whole thing was done at the beginning where you don't have to formally do this. So this whole thing is just for the response to say
I feel like Snapchat can do whatever you want.
All right, who wants to talk about question 17? Data warehouse example A. Is it a star schema containing active dimensions, a snowflake schema with more than 4 standard dimensions, a snowflake schema has hierarchical dimensions, or neither a snowflake or a star schema? Who reckons they've got an idea? Yeah, it is a star schema, and it contains dimensions in a fact table. So snowflake schemas have to have like nested hierarchies and have more than like one tier of like surrounding dimensions. So this is a star schema. Star schemas can have 2 dimensions, they can have 5 dimensions, but it's just that they're flat around that central fact table. All right, I'll let you continue. Question 18. Please discuss it amongst your peers. No, which one's that?
This particular single, like a lot of the no, sorry,
Oh,
sorry, I thought it was yeah, there were a lot of things that were kind of and actually it was wrong with the structure as well. Technically, you dig into it because technically our definition is not literal. It's 3.5.
I thought like factor was like
But the definition, which is all terms are it's not literal, and it's 3.5, which normally doesn't matter
just like the T.
until you get a question
And then
which is like
the fact table is the one that has
multiple
center is the fact table, and then you have like
and then it's actually goes to the same thing. I used to just walk it away, and I used to say dumb stuff as well, like this
I think the
function
business process is the customer making it.
or
yes,
Like that's the
and we'll choose our primary key because the subject is divided into
Yeah.
the primary key means primary key means there's no effect whatsoever. No, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't affect anything. It's optional if it's part of any.
So fact is
Because it's basically just if it's a primary or something.
basically
That's all.
fact table.
Yeah, so it's subtly different. not the technical prescribed by the Southern.
The one
And then,
foot
yeah, a
zero.
fact
I
is
think
basically
maybe now
something that
but-
can mean a fact, which is basically like a numerical.
I mean, actually, you can look at hierarchy as well.
Something you basically can guess from. That's and also.
Yeah.
So then type
That's pretty much what I was thinking of that particular. I had to replace.
Yeah, I mean, there's also.
It's not totally nice, but just
Yeah, just like.
It's a bit ambiguous.
all facts. And that is a fact because that's what I was wondering whether that's like the time thing.
It's like a level basically. So in time, like the finest like times like seconds, and then it goes like minutes, it goes to hours, and then hours go to days, and then days goes like weeks, and so on and so forth. If you have something like that, it's like you go from like regular, you go from granular, finest just down to like.
But I think you're right. I think it was
really recognizable.
But I mean, you can also ask that you go through suburbs.
Alrighty, so now let's have a little geeky yap about question 18. Who reckons they know what the amount is? Yep, the amount is a fact. Who reckons they know what the business is? Yep, it's a dimension. Excellent. Who reckons they know what the bank expenditure is? Yes, it's a fact table. It's that beautiful one in the middle. Who reckons they know what country is? Yep, so country is actually just an attribute. Now, the other option that I thought was a bit tempting was hierarchy, because you can see in the location table that you have a country, and then you have a state or region, and then you have a locality or suburb. So if you say know the suburb, then you would know the state, and then you would also know the country. So there is hierarchy there, but country itself is an attribute, right? And then that brings us to type category. Any guesses? Yep, also an attribute, and again has the same thing where there's a subcategory and a type category, and if you know one, you probably know the other. But in data warehouses, we're allowed denormalized data. Yeah.
So what would you consider a hierarchy in terms of like answering this question?
Yep. So hierarchy often pertains to like time, in that like if you know the day, then you know the week, and then you would know the month, and you know the year. But theoretically, it kind of speaks to other denormalized data.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, because time is very obvious hierarchy, because like if you know a minute, you know the hour. If it's like minute, this is an objective minute of a day, I guess. But things like, you can still have denormalized data where you might have like, I don't know, a wine region, and there might be a winery in it, which isn't necessarily hierarchical per se, but you'd be able to lump it together. And then custom making a purchase, what do you reckon?
Business process.
Yeah, correct, business process. All right, I'll leave you to question 19.
It exists in other dimensions as well. So an example would be, okay,
Yeah, location. The hierarchy is totally arbitrary. Hierarchy is something that is
basically a suburb would be like a fact. So for example, let's say
choosing one
South Yarra. South Yarra can be part of,
You can have as many
and Victoria, you can be part of like.
It's like a development.
You see how it keeps like leveling up basically, like one thing is part of another, and that runs plus. When you have that kind of relationship, that's you kind of describe it as hierarchy. Yeah, exactly.
So we're saying that the primary
There's
is
a collection of things that could be less.
a non-category to category. So I guess what I'm saying is that then those attributes kind of mean
Time is a hierarchy.
No, they're supposed to be super key.
yeah, it's like
Yeah, the whole row is always a super key.
Okay, so it's more about
As specific as it gets. As the output records, if it was done at between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.
So then once again, while we're talking about candidates, anything that is a member of any candidates is private.
Time, and then you can
Or, yeah. And that was the conversation I had with
it doesn't actually record minutes.
the slide actually
talks a bit about granularity in a data warehouse. So do we think that we can answer the question, what was the total expenditure by customers with our high income bracket between June 1st and June 30th? Yes, I would agree. Are customers over the age of 40 more likely to make purchases at Melbourne Central or Melbourne Emporium? Please note that both Melbourne Central and Melbourne Emporium are in the CBD. No, and the reason we can't do that is because we don't have individual stores. The smallest granularity per location is suburb, so we couldn't tell the difference between stores. Find customers that have spent more on purchases with a type of gamer gear than on food. Yes, we can do that. And then lastly, how many people purchased alcohol on the 2nd of February 2022 at 2:22? No, and why can't we do that? Yeah, so in the time, we don't record the minutes, and that is a specific minute question. Alright, beauty. So that is the end of data warehousing, and I'll hand over to Colton for database concepts.
Okay, nice. So if people have better things to do than talk about backups, I won't be mad if people have to head off. So the last part of what we're going to talk about is kind of just a roundup of these last couple concepts. So we talked about transactions, distributed databases, backups, and NoSQL. This part of the subject has the greatest amount of variation in terms of how we assess it, because we don't really have these preset formats like we have for assignments. So we'll try and ask questions that are assessing your understanding of the topics, which might involve some open-ended questions, some like short answer questions. It might involve some kind of deeper questions on one of these topics, and the rest aren't even covered at all in these ends. So yeah, try and understand them as much as you can when you're doing the revision, but focus more on the other parts because that's where you're going to work on. This is kind of the last part. So yeah, these are types of things that we've had in the past, just different things to keep in mind when you're studying. So first things first, the transaction section. So we've got, this would have been a pretty substantial transaction question from previous year. So most of these questions are adapted from past exam questions, just FYI. So this one would have been more than the average amount that we have in the transaction stuff. So give you a few minutes to do that, we'll come back together.
They've rewritten the stream. He wants to try and look at the average grade for students, and he was just trying to update the grade. I think it's open in data. Because person one is trying to do an operation.
I do not have, that's a very specific charger.
Hey, a quick question. Hello? Hello?
No, it's like, sorry, it's a USB-C, I can try that.
Like a barrel pole?
What is that?
Puppy, that's an Ethernet port.
Colton,
What is on the
can you
other
hear
side?
me?
It'll be on the back.
Yeah, it's just USB-C.
Yeah, it's just
It's USB-C. It is USB-C.
Oh, it's on the other side. I'm the one on the other side. It's like,
What? Like that?
No, that's just a USB card.
Oh.
Open it up.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
Oh, but someone's using that.
I mean, it's like a 96 hours. Oh, yeah.
But I don't.
Haven't you heard? It's been doing great.
Yeah, of what P1 reads.
I like the Jesuits a lot more than most Catholic sects.
Oh, maybe not. So isn't it T1 T1 regions and values?
No, we're back. So what I like about it is that
Oh wait, I think
It's not serialized.
because if you serialize T1 first, then they read
it's fine, it's like,
It's sort of like as you get further away from it, it's so it's
Whether you do it. Whereas if you do
oh yeah,
don't get me wrong, I don't like meals, but I absolutely love myself. And it's just literally like, what I'm getting at is that we can do like, so it's just like, that's just like the best movies. Yeah, we ended up marrying someone who's from Steve, so I'm not actually doing
So, like I said, this was a really, oh, I don't even have the question up. This was a really tricky question. I really should have the extra. Yes, plus. I thought I pasted it in here, sorry. I can actually just plug it in. Or just use it.
I mean, you
Doesn't
could
actually
plug it
matter.
in, but I think you might have to change the zoom and that'll be a whole hassle. So
Oh,
I think
yeah, true,
if
true.
you
That's
just
not
want
gonna
to pull this out and then you can like sit the
work. Okay.
double
Yeah, I want to
laptop
kind
it.
of point out.
Exactly.
Yay, that's good. No, I kind of want to like point it out on the screen. But that's fine. Okay, so let's go through it. First question. What was the name of this problem? Inconsistent retrieval problem. Okay, what gave that away? What is the inconsistent retrieval problem?
Just as a person with a lot of data, but another person blind cannot see.
I also would have accepted just this as the answer because it's basically exactly what's happening here. One person is trying to read some data and the other person is trying to write at the same time. Okay, so remember we had the acid properties, ACID. Which of those four is being violated? It's a result of not having a strong enough version of it that causes this property, this problem, sorry. So one of atomicity, consistency, isolation, or durability would prevent this problem from happening. Which one is it? Have a guess. You got a 1 in 4 chance, 25%. Consistency? Not quite. Isolation, yes. So why isn't it consistency is the first question. What does consistency mean in acid?
It's like the processes are like the same. Isn't it like the processes to like update and do operations like the same? So multiple processes to update.
Close. That is, I think that's pretty close. That's more like a technical understanding of how you would implement consistency. But yeah, it's the right idea. So consistency just means that whatever kind of constraints we're defining on our database, a transaction will take your database from one consistent state, whatever we define consistent as, to another consistent state. Okay? The classic sort of example of a constraint, which is something that will happen in all relational databases, is that foreign keys are correct. So if you have something that you've denoted as a foreign key, it's actually pointing to a particular value in another table, right? So you should never have a transaction which takes your database from a state where it has a valid foreign key to has an invalid foreign key or vice versa. Okay? Unless that's what you define. Okay? So consistency wasn't it, but isolation is. So why is isolation the answer? How would this problem be mitigated if we had the correct isolation level of these transactions? Yeah, effectively they wouldn't be interleaving at all, right? Why wouldn't they be interleaving at all? It's because in this example we've got a read, one transaction's just doing reads, and the other one is doing potentially just writes or writes and reads. Okay? So as long as they're not sort of interfering and interleaving with each other, then these transactions should be able to kind of conceptually execute, right? One's got to go first and then the other one after, right? So if we have serializability, as in we have an isolation level of serializable or up, then this should be able to work so that the people aren't sort of messing with the data at the same time. Okay, so that was inconsistent retrieval problem. What was the average that we calculated? Did anyone calculate what the average was from that interleave? Sorry? 70. Great. Is everyone happy with that? Anyone get a different answer? Okay, the next question is where it starts to get hard. So who's got an answer for transactions part 3? The serializability of that and how you could order them. You chose the first one, okay. Do you want to explain why you chose the first one?
Well, because the second, in the first process we only read, but then it's multiplied.
Specifically, like,
Yeah.
transaction 2 is going to be first run on, like, first writes, and then the second person just reads.
Yep.
Then it should be.
But are you going to get the same outcome from the query if you do it that way? But will you still get an average of 70? No. So the question is trying to ask, could we sort of serialize these two and still get the same result from the query that we got from that particular interleaving? So one option was T2 first and then T1. What's another option? T1 and then T2. So would that give us the same results? And you can kind of look through the log there, and you say, okay, we're gonna just pretend like T1, the first transaction does its 3 reads, and then after that, transaction 2 does its 4 things, right? Reads and writes. Okay. Would that still give us the 70 from that average calculation? Yes, it would. So we could serialize them that way. Great. And then the last two were kind of just fake objects. So then the part 4 was having you think about all the different interleavings that could happen. So all the ways that you could rearrange those different reads and writes, and how you could get different averages from them. Did anyone try that? No? Yes? So obviously 70 is going to be one of them, right? Because we chose 70 as our previous answer. How could you rearrange these and get different values? Okay, that's good. Thanks, Darren. Who will show us?
You write student 1's grade to 83 before P1 reads it.
Yep, that would change things, right? Yeah. So instead of using an average of, a value of 80, you'd use 83. Maybe whiteboard is the best choice for this one. So how did we get 70?
Oh yeah. I tried color over like all the colors were like to one subject and like all colors were to
Yeah, I love that.
different but similar.
I love that.
Wow.
Okay, so how did we get 70? Someone give me the calculation. So is that 80 plus 70 is 60? Alright, so 3 equals 70, right? So that's one possible ability, gives us that. So now, if we did the right first, right, so we updated this person, then it was going to be 83 plus 70 plus 60, right? 71. Any other ones that we get?
We do the P2 first and then P1, and we get 83, 75, and 60. That's 72 points.
3, 72 point what?
6.
So it's 666. Great. And then the last one is 83 plus 75 plus. Oh, do they update the last person or not?
No.
No. Okay, then that's it.
No, wait. What if student 1? What if P1 reads student 1 first? P2 updates student 1. P2 updates student 2. P1 reads student 2.
So it's got like 80,
So
75,
80, 75, 60.
80, 75. Okay. I tried to mitigate that in the question by saying the transactions are only reading through in order. So if you read at the bottom of the question, it has a line that says, assume that the transactions always read the data sequentially based on the student number. So like they're sort of going through the table in ID order or something like that when they're doing these operations. Just to prevent all the combination, like all the explosion of ways that you could reorder them. Does that make sense? So it's sort of going through, the one transaction is going through reading and updating things, right? And it's going through sort of student order. So it's either organized this or not. As soon as the transaction
Yeah, I think this included that one, but
70, 71, 71,
I think the
Oh, okay. Oh, I actually had the other. Is it? No, they. Oh, you don't have it. Okay. Sorry, so the question, I guess, wasn't updated. So it should have, what, 71.666 as an option? Okay. Equals 71.666. Okay, that's fine. I did update the question, but I didn't update the answer, sorry. Okay. So the point of that is just to get you to think about what happens if you don't have the correct level of isolation in your transactions, right? Which is that these people are competing for the same resources, and depending on how exactly you're executing those queries, you can get different outcomes. All right, so we don't have a whole lot of time left, but there's a NoSQL question in there and a backups question for you to work on as well. Those are kind of a little bit cookie cutter. The questions are fairly similar. If we ask you a question about backups, it's going to be recommend a backup strategy. And if we ask you a question about NoSQL, it'll be recommend a NoSQL database for the most part as well. So yeah, feel free to do those in your spare time. See ya. Good luck, guys. That is all pretty much from us. Do you guys have any further questions? Thanks for that.
No, but we do have a feedback form.
Oh, we have a feedback form? Okay.
Just on, yeah, you can have it.
Yes, and so as we mentioned at the beginning, this is all hosted by CISA, and we try to do this every semester, and we want to make sure that we're kind of doing this to the best of our abilities, and we also want to make sure that we're giving what you guys want. So if there's any suggestions that you'd like to make, any reviews, or something that might have been off-putting from previous subjects or like this workshop, please let us know, and we'll definitely improve the next semester. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
How about like OSD revision workshop? Is it actually cancelled?
Unfortunately, yes, the revision workshop itself is cancelled and is now being replaced with an OSD study session. So what we're hoping to do is we'll get the slides back to you as a slide pack for anyone to revise on. And alongside that, we're also going to be having exam questions that I think most OSD students have access to. But yeah, it'll mostly just be snacks and students just being able to collaborate and practice questions like this, just without the tutors. Yes, currently those are still being updated for public viewing, but soon enough, at least by the end of the workshops on Wednesday, they should all be up. Yes, we'll be opening that soon. So yes, in the Discord announcements, and also on the live streams, we're hoping to put that in the description as well. So if you go on the YouTube sister channel, all of this was recorded.
Alright.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you. Thank you.
While you're studying, ask questions on Ed as early as you can, by the way, because if you leave it till like the day before the exam, everyone else will have the same idea.
Also, feel free to grab some snacks for like energy boosters on the way home or revise. Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can't go back to crappy markers.
So slides have not been updated yet. So what we're going to be doing is have them. So this goes over announcement. It will also be on YouTube live stream.
Can you send this to us as well? I guess we can look it up because one of the things that I wanted to ask is like they want to understand more opportunity per se. So I think well, you can probably send us the report. Yes. Yeah, so we can post that on now. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, sure. Like we want to do that because otherwise they say it's not fair for everyone in the subject.
Yeah, we can do that.
Either just like send us an email.
Yeah, to